I'm Ivor Meštrović. I'm a member of the International Board of the European Youth Parliament, the governing body. I also happen to be a law student with a focus in human rights. So today I will be answering EYP's most burning questions about the Charter of Fundamental Rights of the European Union. Jellyfish 2019 asks, what are the fundamental rights and how different are they from human rights? Well, the reality is that they are not different. They're just different names for the same thing. That same thing, of course, human rights. The most kind of basic rights, liberties, freedoms all of us have as humans because we are humans. It's as simple as that. Point of Order 24 asks, what even is the Charter of Fundamental Rights and why is it only for the EU? Don't people outside the EU have rights too? Yes, of course they do. It is important to bear in mind the fact that the Charter of Fundamental Rights of the European Union applies to the European Union because it's an instrument of European Union law. It's not a document that can apply to, for example, the United States of America. It's an EU instrument. There are many other human rights treaties in the world, such as the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights, etc. Indeed, there are so many more, and all of those have the same purpose, to protect human rights. It's truly a giant world of human rights protection that exists in the international sphere, and that's a good thing. We want, of course, human rights to be protected, for them to be effective, and of course, for people, all of us as humans, to be able to experience them no matter where they are. Direct Responder 04 asks, so this thing is supposed to protect my rights, but only if my problem involves EU law? What kind of half-baked protection is that? Half-baked. This charter cannot apply itself to something that is not European Union law. The same way that the law of the United Kingdom cannot apply to Norway. Of course, that's a natural limit to how laws work. However, I should say that having the charter is not half-baked because the charter indeed applies in all circumstances, right? In short, of course, it applies only insofar European Union law applies, and that's how it works with any law, frankly. Talk the talk, walk the walk asks, if my government is violating my charter rights, do I just call Brussels, send an email? How does this work? Great username. Yes, you can call Brussels, you can email Brussels, if by Brussels you mean the European Commission. So there's this really cool power that the European Commission has, which is called the infringement procedure. It allows the European Commission to start launching a court case against a member state, insofar it believes it violates EU law, which, yes, includes the Charter of Fundamental Rights. Moreover, it is important to keep in mind that there are a plethora of actors, stakeholders, institutions, offices that could help you with your human rights case. But it really depends, and I really have to emphasize this really, on what specifically it refers to. You could have the European Ombudsman if your human rights violation concerns any of the happenings of any European institution, body, etc. You also have in every member state of the EU some human rights agencies, public bodies which could help you. Many member states have ombudsmen. Just like there's a European ombudsman, you can invoke the Charter of Fundamental Rights in your own national court in a case that you might have against whoever you believe is violating your human right. Of course, the Charter, again, only applies insofar EU law applies. So you cannot invoke the Charter if this is a matter not covered by European Union law. In short, there are a lot of powerful players who could help you in one way or another, such as the European Commission, which could take any member state directly to court if it believes it is violating fundamental rights. But there are many other actors, such as ombudsmen and other bodies, that could help you on this path. I should also add, after I gave you an answer, that you can always take up active citizenship. You can always be on the first lines of protests for advancing certain human rights and certain human development goals. You can certainly always be politically engaged by joining certain political parties, movements, anything of that kind, by advocating for further development of humankind in that sense. We can always do just a bit more in terms of our active citizenship. And this is exactly what EYP teaches all of us. Law and Order fan asks, who even enforces this thing? Like, is there an EU superhero who comes in when my rights get violated? As I explained in the previous answer, there are indeed many stakeholders. That can be a good and a bad thing. It can be a good thing because there are many different people who you can turn to, many different persons, many different offices, many different experts. However, it can be a bad thing because it's a bit difficult to find yourself in this vast network of fundamental rights protection. I want to emphasize one fact here, and that is that once again you have the European Commission. So if you believe that your case is so serious, the European Commission could take it up. They are receptive to this. And they look at different kind of human rights reports, the state of human rights in different countries. They follow the media in that sense. Already, the previously described infringement procedure, Commission started it against some member states for certain cases of discrimination or simply not following through with their human rights commitments when it comes to particular issues. Of course, this is important to emphasize. If you want a superhero, you have to come to that superhero with a concrete thing in mind. You need some facts to support it, because that's how you build a case, and that's how you go and make sure that human rights are protected. But again, this is just one side of the coin, and that's correcting the mistakes and ensuring they don't happen. You can always be more proactive with it. And this is where the European legislators, particularly the European Parliament, as one of the two legislators of the European Union, comes in very handy. Why? Because you can always talk to your MEP. Imagine all the people asks, right to asylum, protection against discrimination, privacy. This all sounds great. Indeed it does. But do countries actually follow this? Or is it just wishful thinking? No, it is not just wishful thinking. It is important for everyone involved to follow and obey fundamental rights. That means that there should be no violations, but indeed that there should also be effective systems in place to ensure they are not there in the first place. Of course, human rights violations, fundamental rights violations can happen. A few examples come to my mind, a few court cases, if you will, where it was demonstrated how the Charter helps the case and how EU law generally, with its vast legislative agenda, helps individuals ensure their rights are protected. We, for example, have Seda Küçükdevedje, who was able to win her case in Sweden, well, in front of the Court of Justice of the European Union, but she lived in Sweden and was complaining of age discrimination. Indeed, that is not all right when it comes to fundamental rights. We also have a case of Servat Kamberai, an Albanian, so non-EU national, who has been living and working in Italy and wanted to claim housing benefits that were equal to permanent residents and Italian citizens. And you bet that fundamental rights protection, when it comes to EU law and when it comes to that domain, was there for him. Of course, not every case, not every alleged violation is a violation ultimately, but it is important to know that going to court is not an easy thing to do. It's a brave thing to do. You might have heard, regarding privacy, for example, the General Data Protection Regulation. And on that note of protection of personal data, and this is really important to know, there are 3 paragraphs. The first one says unequivocally, everyone has the right to the protection of personal data concerning him or her. That's quite a powerful statement. And this is why we need the GDPR. It's a system behind enforcement of this right. It's an entire set of rules and regulations to ensure that this sentence and the rest of it in the Charter are truly kept up. These cases truly helped people win their cases, have their fundamental rights enforced, protected. There is a general duty that all EU bodies and all member states and their bodies have when it comes to European Union law. There are no ifs, no buts to that. No exceptions. Going Strong 1987 asks, I heard the Charter only applies to public authorities, so does that mean private companies can do whatever they want? No, absolutely not. Keep in mind, again, the Charter applies insofar EU law applies. And there's a lot of EU law that applies to businesses. It is important to note that there are many even cases about it, and you just a bit before heard about one of them. Age discrimination. Indeed, discrimination in the workplace and concerning employment is a prominent issue. Rete Lenford was this association that went to court against this employer who on a radio show said they would never employ a homosexual. Rete Lenford won because it truly is a matter of discrimination or even a threat thereof that is completely unjustified. In short, indeed, they apply to private companies. They apply to businesses. Patriotic Peppa Pig asks, by the way, amazing username, amazing. Does this mean the EU can tell my country what to do? No. Sounds kinda undemocratic. No, well, it's not about the European Union, this mystic thing that tells your member state what to do. Your member state undertakes these commitments. Your member state signed up for these commitments itself when it joined the European Union. Just like my home member state, Croatia, which was the last one to join the Union. This is simply about protecting fundamental rights, having them enforced, protected, covered, so that all of us as human beings can enjoy them. Sometimes, yes, the European Union, such as the Court of Justice of the European Union says, well, actually, there's a violation here. You should do better on this. But it's a normal part of any democratic governance to have strong, independent, vigilant courts with such judges who are independent, who are impartial, who are under no undue influence. Tinted Teeth asks, if I work in an EU country but I'm not an EU citizen, do my rights still count? Yes, absolutely. Or is this for, quote, EU people only, end quote? There is an exception. And this exception concerns rights of political participation mostly, and only some of them, i.e. voting in elections. You have two charter articles which are important here, Articles 39 and 40. They both detail the right to vote and to stand as a candidate, in the case of Article 39 for European Parliament elections, and in case of Article 40, local, municipal, regional, county elections. There, these rights are only for union citizens. Meow the Cat asks, does this cover my right to have a really strong Wi-Fi signal everywhere I go? No? Then what's the point? I love your passion for Wi-Fi. I share it. It is important to say, and oftentimes we neglect the fact, that internet and internet connectivity is vital to the conduct of our daily lives. Wi-Fi signal is not an explicitly provided right here in the Charter, but what it is indispensable sometimes to the fulfillment of some of these rights. And of course, shutting out someone from Wi-Fi, from the internet, let's rather say, would not be okay. If there are consistent issues in terms of where you live, for example, as opposed to some other places, maybe you could look into why that is the case. It could be that it's for some technical geographical reason, but it could also be that it's simply because you and the rest of your community is discriminated against. Short answer, Wi-Fi, not an explicit right, but internet connectivity is indeed a very important matter nowadays for the fulfillment of a lot of our fundamental rights. Considering all the aspects asks, if freedom of expression is a fundamental right, does that mean I can say whatever I want online without consequences? Asking for a friend. Well, I hope that friend stays within the boundaries of the law because indeed actions have consequences, words have consequences. Free speech is a right recognized in so many human rights, fundamental rights, treaties, constitutions, etc. However, I want to emphasize the fact that whatever you want to communicate, you have an absolute freedom to think it. We're talking about Article 10 here in terms of freedom of thought, conscience, and religion. However, when it comes to freedom of expression and information, Article 11 of the Charter, this one can be more limited. Of course, freedom and pluralism of the media must be respected. We want free and independent media. However, actions do have these consequences. So when it comes to, for example, hate speech, that one goes beyond what is here. And it goes beyond because you are effectively then abusing your right of speech to harm someone else. For example, by insulting someone repetitively. You can harm their human dignity, basic human dignity like that. You can cause a lot of different issues there. If you're constantly lying about someone's business, Article 16 of the Charter, for example, then you're harming their ability to conduct a business. For example, in EYP, we have an etiquette about how we should act and behave online. And I think it's great guidance as to what you shouldn't post, should or shouldn't comment. Hate, non-tolerance has no place in our society, has no place in this document, in the Charter of Fundamental Rights. The point is to be an inclusive and diverse society, diverse in ways of thought, religion, whatnot. That's what's protected here. Not saying that someone is, and then insert your whatever slur comes to mind. That's not the point. So let's stay and let's ensure we're respectful. Branching out 74 asks, wait, there's a right to protection of personal data in here. So why do I still get spam emails every day? I'm not quite sure what you mean by spam emails. If you think about all of the different things you signed up for, well, you have the right to unsubscribe from those emails. So if you get your weekly shopping offers or news sources come to your email in their daily, weekly, monthly briefs, you have the right to unsubscribe. You also have the right to unsubscribe from the EYP newsletter, for example, if you're signed up for that one. But I would definitely not encourage you to unsubscribe from that one. If your data is leaked, indeed, those who leaked it and those who have been involved in any capacity, truly any capacity, are to be held liable. The EU does quite a lot to protect data and to ensure that spam emails that you get can be adequately dealt with already by you. You can unsubscribe if those are such emails, but if your data was leaked and somehow it's some sort of a random spam email, please also feel free to turn to the authorities because they indeed must and want to help. In short, yes, you have that right, and you have so much more that derives from that right. Pump It Up in the Club asks, Article 1 says human dignity is inviolable. Cool, but like, what does that actually mean? And there's an emphasis on actually here. Indeed, that actually is very important. I quite like the emphasis because it encapsulates what human dignity is. Name me a right, and there's a human dignity basis for it. Because this is what essentially human rights, fundamental rights, are all about. When it comes to, for example, peaceful protesters, so people who have certain political opinions, goals, motivations, and they go out in the street, and let's say they are peaceful, they are respectful, also in terms of language as much as possible, so there is no law broken there. They're exercising their freedom of assembly and of association, Charter Article 12. And God forbid, that someone attacks them. And mind you, these attacks can happen in so many different ways. Physically, mentally, even threats thereof can be like that. Keep in mind, we're in 2025, and there are many different ways that someone can attack a person, someone can attack a protester. That means that not just their Charter Article 12 right of freedom of assembly and of association would be violated, but also their Charter Article 6, the right to liberty and security, which says, in a very simple sentence, everyone has the right to liberty and security of person. Very clear. Your security as a person is physical, it's mental, and it evolves to so many different ways. Techniques, how it can be put pressure on, how it can be attacked. I have to repeat this again. Even promises of doing so by anyone relevant, such as, counter-protesters of certain government authorities, are not fine. They are already in a violation of these fundamental rights. Why? because they attack at the very core of these rights, also at human dignity. Because if you have, first and foremost, you have the right to believe in a certain cause, Article 10 of the Charter. You have a right to express it, Article 11 of the Charter. And you have a right to express it in such a protest, assembly format, Article 12. You shouldn't be threatened in terms of your own security as a person, your own integrity as a person. It's not just Charter Article 6. You can look at Article 3. To an extent, but specifically regarding physical and mental integrity. Even if you did something wrong at a protest and broke a law, you shouldn't be tortured. There should be no inhuman or degrading treatment or punishment for you. That's Charter Article 4. And that's what matters most. And you see how human dignity in the interplay of cases and fundamental rights is always at its core. We want people to be people, and we want to treat people as people, all of us, with equal rights. That's the whole point of it. So, in short, human dignity is inviolable. This means that it's an umbrella and yes, an abstract concept that covers so much, but it's at the very core of each right, and that core should never be targeted. Now, on to shorter things. Vibe checkers. There are more Z's here. If the Charter is so powerful, why do I never hear about it? Is this like one of those EU things that only lawyers know exist? I don't think so. However, projects like Focus, the one we're conducting right now, are indeed very important to raise awareness. Awareness not in the sense of just, oh, the Charter exists, but in actually being able to understand all of these rights, or as many of these rights, and ensuring that you are protected, if you will, and that you understand how you are protected. Oftentimes when it comes to laws and their specifics, it is lawyers or certainly people in the field or related fields who know more of it. Makes sense, they're the experts, of course. However, I must say that this is something so basic, and you don't have to be a human rights lawyer to know, understand, and appreciate what the Charter of Fundamental Rights does to you. Custodian of the Charter asks, if education is a fundamental right, why do private schools and universities still exist? Shouldn't all education be free? I will answer the first question first. Makes sense, right? Yes, education is a fundamental right. Article 14 of the Charter speaks to that end. However, it must be said that not every stage of education is compulsory. Makes sense, right? Not everyone will go to university, and that's perfectly fine. We need people who go and who don't go to universities. But what we need above all is that their education, their basic, their elementary education and whatever more, is accessible enough so that it is a fundamental right, of course. Which brings me to the second question. Shouldn't it be free for all? There are many different ways to achieve that, in terms of suspensive mechanisms for payment of tuition fees or other matters, to simply not having tuition fees in the first place. But there are so many other costs that accompany education, in terms of textbooks, printing, for a lot of students, and so many different matters. And this is where you also, as a political subject, come into play, as an active citizen, because you can come to your members of the European Parliament, members of your own parliament, your own government, the European Commission, and share your ideas in terms of how to further promote the quality of education and accessibility of education. In short, it is a right, shouldn't be free. What is compulsory must be free, Charter Article 14, paragraph 2. And you can always take up politically this cause. Indeed, this is what in EYP we do in terms of civic education, ensuring young people have the skills to also articulate these matters. Thank you for many engaging and thoughtful questions. Thank you for being active and for taking an interest in the fundamental rights. What we do in EYP is teach young people to be exactly like that, to develop skills, to learn, and also feel at ease, to ask these kinds of questions, but also take up these causes to the relevant stakeholders. I think that's the brilliance of youth engagement, active citizenship, and I would warmly encourage all of you to keep it up. See you somewhere in Europe.